Commander Kai-Wan stood at the bridge of the starship Defiance, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His hands gripped the metal rail so tight that his knuckles turned white. Behind him, officers from 12 different alien species worked at their control stations. The air hummed with quiet tension. 3 days ago, long-range sensors had detected the Vorthak war fleet moving toward Earth. The same fleet that had destroyed 17 worlds in the past century. The same fleet that carried the most feared weapon in the galaxy. Lieutenant Highrim approached him with a datapad in her hands. Her face was pale and worried. "Sir, the intelligence report is ready." Kai-Wan took the pad and read the numbers. 200 Vorthak warships, 50,000 soldiers. And somewhere in that fleet, stored in special containment units, was enough flesh dissolver to kill every living thing on Earth. The flesh dissolver was not like other weapons. Laser cannons could destroy buildings. Plasma bombs could level cities. Nuclear missiles could wipe out entire regions. But the flesh dissolver could end all life on a planet in just a few hours. Kai-Wan remembered the first time he had seen it used. 5 years ago, during the Battle of Proxima 7, he had been a junior officer aboard a rescue ship. The Vorthak had given the human colony exactly 1 hour to surrender. When the colonists refused, the Vorthak released their bioweapon. From orbit, Kai-Wan had watched through the ship's cameras as the weapon spread across the planet's surface like gray mist. It moved slowly at first, then faster as it gained strength. Everything it touched began to dissolve. Trees melted like ice in hot water. Animals collapsed and turned to liquid. Even the grass and soil started to bubble and steam. The colonists tried to run. They sealed themselves in bunkers and underground shelters. They wore protective suits and breathing masks. Nothing worked. The flesh dissolver found every living cell and destroyed it. Within 3 hours, 10,000 people had become pools of smoking acid. The rescue teams could not even recover bodies for burial. There were no bodies left to find. Now the same weapon was heading toward Earth, home to 8 billion humans who had no idea what was coming their way. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Junho from across the bridge, "Admiral Hajin is requesting a meeting with all senior staff in Conference Room 1. Kai-Wan nodded and handed the datapad back to Lieutenant Highrim. As he walked through the corridors of the Defiance, he saw crew members from many different worlds. Blue-skinned Altarians with 4 arms worked alongside insect-like Zenthari. Tall, thin Rigelians shared duty shifts with rock-like Gornaks. For 50 years, these species had worked together as the Galactic Defense Coalition, but none of them had ever found a way to stop the flesh dissolver. Conference Room 1 was already crowded when Kai-Wan arrived. Admiral Hajin, a stern woman, with gray hair, stood at the head of the table. Around her sat the Coalition's best military minds. General Sung-min of the 4th Fleet, Captain Byung-ho of the Science Division, Commander Yo-jin of Special Operations. "Gentlemen, ladies, and honored beings," Admiral Hajin began. "The situation is worse than we thought. Our spies inside Vorthak territory confirm that Emperor Vexai has ordered the complete destruction of Earth. No surrender will be accepted this time." A heavy silence filled the room. Everyone knew what this meant. The Vorthak had grown tired of making threats. They wanted to make an example of humanity to scare other species into submission. "What about evacuation?" asked General Sungmin. "We have transport ships. We could save some of the population." 8 billion people, replied Captain Byung-ho, shaking his head. "Our entire transport fleet could carry maybe 50 million. And where would we take them? The Vorthak would just follow and finish the job." "What about a preemptive strike?" suggested Commander Yo-jin. "Hit them before they reach Earth?" "Their fleet is too strong," Admiral Hajin said. "We would lose every ship and accomplish nothing. The bioweapon would still be deployed." Kai-Wan had heard these same discussions after every Vorthak attack for the past decade. The Coalition always came to the same conclusion. There was no defense against the flesh dissolver. "No way to fight it, no way to stop it, sir," he said, raising his hand. "What do we actually know about how the weapon works?" Captain Byung-ho pulled up a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed microscopic organisms swimming in a green liquid. The flesh dissolver contains billions of engineered microbes. When released into an atmosphere, they seek out organic matter. They attach to living cells and begin breaking down the molecular bonds that hold them together. The hologram zoomed in to show a single cell being attacked by the microbes. The process is incredibly fast. The microbes multiply as they feed, creating more of themselves from the material they consume. They produce acid as a waste product, which dissolves whatever is left behind. "How long does it take?" asked Kaiwan. "For a single organism? Usually 5 to 10 minutes. For an entire planet?" Captain Byung-ho paused. "The longest any world has survived after deployment is 4 hours and 37 minutes. Have we ever tried to create a cure? An antidote? Many times. The problem is that the microbes adapt too quickly. By the time we develop a countermeasure, they have evolved past it. The Vorthak designed them to be impossible to stop." Admiral Hajin stood up and walked to the viewing window. Outside, space looked peaceful and empty. But somewhere out there, death was traveling toward Earth at faster than light speed. "The Vorthak will arrive in 71 hours, she said without turning around. "Earth's government has been informed. They are preparing emergency broadcasts to let their people know what is happening. Some cities are building underground shelters, but we all know they will not help." She turned back to face the room. "I want every available ship moved to Earth's orbit. If we cannot stop the bioweapon, we will at least make the Vorthak pay a price for using it. Perhaps our sacrifice will inspire other species to keep fighting." As the meeting ended and officers began to file out, Kaiwan remained in his chair. He thought about his family back on New Seoul. His parents had been so proud when he joined the coalition. They believed he was helping to make the galaxy a safer place. Now he wondered if he would live long enough to see them again. The flesh dissolver did not care about courage or honor or sacrifice. It simply consumed everything in its path. But somewhere in his heart, Kaiwan refused to give up hope. Humans were new to the galactic community. Maybe they had something that other species lacked. Maybe they would find a way to survive. He had no idea how right he was. Dr. Sora Kim wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stared at the microscope display. For 3 months, she had been working in the secret laboratory hidden deep inside asteroid station Omega-7. The Coalition had built this facility in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, far from any Vorthak patrols. Her mission was simple in words but impossible in practice. Find a way to stop the flesh dissolver. Save the galaxy from the Vorthak's ultimate weapon. So far, she had failed completely. The laboratory walls were lined with containment units holding test subjects from across the known galaxy. Altarian crystal crabs with their diamond-hard shells. Silicon-based Xanthari that could survive in the vacuum of space. Even samples of the legendary iron moss from Rigel Prime that could eat through solid metal. Every single test subject had died within minutes of exposure to the bioweapon. "Dr. Kim," called her assistant Lieutenant Dongmin Park from across the lab. "The communication array is receiving an emergency transmission from Admiral Ha-Jin." Sora walked over to the communication station and activated the holographic display. Admiral Ha-Jin's face appeared, looking tired and grim. "Dr. Kim, I hope you have good news for us." "I am sorry, Admiral. Every test has failed. The bioweapon destroys all organic matter we have tried. Silicon-based life forms last a few minutes longer, but they still die." Admiral Ha-Jin closed her eyes for a moment. "Doctor, we are out of time. The Vorthak fleet will reach Earth in 48 hours. I am sending you permission to begin human testing." Sora felt her heart skip a beat. "Admiral, the risks are too great. If the bioweapon works on humans the same way it works on other species, any volunteer will die in minutes. Doctor, if we do not try, 8 billion humans will die in 2 days anyway. At least this way we might learn something useful." The transmission ended, leaving Sora alone with her thoughts. She had always known this day might come. The Coalition was desperate. They needed to test the bioweapon on humans to see if Earth's people had any natural resistance. "Doctor," said Lieutenant Park quietly. "I volunteer." Sora turned to look at her assistant. Dongmin was 26 years old, fresh from the military academy on New Seoul. He had joined her research team 6 months ago after his entire family was killed in a Vorthak raid on the outer colonies. Dongmin, I cannot ask you to do this. You are not asking. I am volunteering. His voice was steady and determined. My parents, my sister, my little brother, they all died when the Vorthak used their bioweapon on Colony 7. If there is any chance that my death can help save Earth, I will take it. Sora stared at him for a long moment. She had seen the reports from Colony 7. 50,000 people dissolved into acid and steam. Dongmin had been serving on a patrol ship when it happened. He came home to find nothing but empty buildings and pools of green liquid. Very well, she said finally. But we will start with the smallest possible dose. If you show any signs of cellular breakdown, I will teleport you immediately to the medical bay. They spent the next hour preparing the containment chamber. Sora activated every safety protocol she could think of. Emergency teleporters, medical scanners, automated systems that would flood the chamber with neutralizing agents if anything went wrong. As they worked, Sora found herself thinking about human biology. Humans were strange compared to most galactic species. Their digestive systems were incredibly aggressive. They produced strong acids in their stomachs. They had billions of bacteria living inside their intestines. Most alien species found human eating habits disgusting. Doctor, Dongmin said as he put on the monitoring equipment, what exactly does this bioweapon taste like? According to the few survivors who encountered small amounts, it has no taste at all. Most victims never even know they have been exposed until the dissolution begins. Dongmin nodded and stepped into the containment chamber. Sora sealed the door and activated the monitoring systems. Every cell in his body was now being watched by sensitive scanners. Are you ready? She asked through the communication system. Ready. Sora opened the first container. Inside was exactly 1 milliliter of flesh dissolver, diluted to 1% of its normal strength. Even this tiny amount would be enough to kill most aliens. She used a robotic arm to place the container inside the chamber. Drink it quickly, then step back. Dongmin picked up the container and drank the liquid in one swallow. Then he stepped back and waited. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. The monitoring system showed no changes, no cellular breakdown, no immune system response. Nothing. How do you feel? Sora asked. Fine. It tasted a little sour, like bad vinegar, but I feel completely normal. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Dongmin remained perfectly healthy. Sora could not believe what she was seeing. She ran diagnostic checks on all the equipment. Everything was working correctly. The bioweapon was definitely active, but it was not affecting Dongmin at all. Doctor, should we try a larger dose? Sora hesitated. This went against every scientific protocol she knew, but they were running out of time, and the results were impossible to ignore. Yes, but this time, we will use a full-strength sample. She prepared a new container with 10 milliliters of undiluted flesh dissolver. This amount could kill an entire Vorthak platoon. She placed it in the chamber and watched as Dongmin drank it without hesitation. Again, nothing happened. The monitors showed no changes at all. It tastes worse at full strength, Dongmin said calmly. Kind of like spoiled kimchi mixed with battery acid, but still not too bad. Sora sat down heavily in her chair. What she was seeing was impossible. The bioweapon that had destroyed 17 worlds and killed billions of beings was having no effect on a human at all. She activated the emergency communication array and sent a message to Admiral Hajin. Admiral, you need to get here immediately. Bring your best xenobiologists. We may have just discovered something that will change everything. As she waited for the Admiral to arrive, Sora watched Dongmin through the chamber window. He was sitting casually reading a book, completely unaffected by enough bioweapon to sterilize a small moon. For the first time in months, Sora felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had found a way to survive after all. Admiral Hajin arrived at Asteroid Station Omega-7 12 hours later, bringing with her the best scientific minds in the coalition. Commander Kaiwan stepped off the transport shuttle first, followed by Dr. Tae-sung from the Altarian Medical Institute and Professor Yanwu, the galaxy's leading expert on bioweapons. They found Dr. So-Ra Kim waiting for them in the main laboratory, her face showing a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Behind her, Lieutenant Dong-Min Park sat at a table eating a sandwich, looking perfectly normal despite having consumed enough bioweapon to kill a small army. Dr. Kim, Admiral Ha-Jin said as she entered the lab, "Your message said you had discovered something important. Please explain what has happened here." So-Ra gestured toward Dong-Min. "Admiral, 18 hours ago, Lieutenant Park consumed 50 milliliters of concentrated flesh dissolver. According to all our calculations, he should have died within minutes. Instead, he appears to be completely unaffected." Professor Yanwu stepped forward, his 6 eyes blinking in disbelief. As a Zinthari, he had studied the bioweapon longer than anyone else in the coalition. "Doctor, are you certain the weapon was active? Perhaps the sample had degraded. I have run every test possible. The bioweapon is fully active and potent. We even exposed samples to other test subjects during the same time period. They all died as expected." Dr. Tae-sung approached the monitoring equipment with her forearms moving in precise patterns. "What do the medical scanners show? No cellular damage, no immune response, no trace of the bioweapon anywhere in his system. It is as if his body simply processed it like food." Commander Kai-Wan stared at Dong-Min through the observation window. "Lieutenant, how do you feel?" "Completely fine, sir. A little hungry maybe, but that's normal for me." Admiral Ha-Jin turned to So-Ra. "Doctor, I need you to run the test again. This time we will all observe directly." So-Ra nodded and began preparing another sample. She measured out 20 milliliters of fresh bioweapon from a sealed container. The green liquid moved slowly, like thick syrup. Everyone in the room knew that even a single drop could kill most galactic species. "Lieutenant Park," Admiral Ha-Jin said through the communication system, "you understand that you do not have to do this again." "I understand, Admiral, but if this can help save Earth, I want to continue." Dong-Min took the container and drank the bioweapon in one gulp. The scientists watched the monitoring displays carefully, looking for any sign of cellular breakdown. 5 minutes passed. 10. 20. "Remarkable," whispered Dr. Tae-sung. "His digestive system appears to be processing the bioweapon like ordinary food." Professor Yanwu was studying the cellular scans with growing amazement. "Look at this. His stomach acid is actually breaking down the microbes. They are being destroyed before they can begin their work." So-Ra pulled up a microscopic view of Dong-Min's digestive tract. Inside, they could see the bioweapon's deadly microbes being attacked by stomach acid and digestive enzymes. The microbes, which had evolved to survive in almost any environment, were dissolving like sugar in water. "This is impossible," Professor Yanwu said. "Human digestive systems are aggressive, but not this aggressive. No known biological process should be able to neutralize the flesh dissolver." Dr. Tae-sung was studying the bacterial analysis. "Actually, it is not just the stomach acid. Look at these readings. The human intestinal bacteria are producing compounds that are directly toxic to the bioweapon." Commander Kai-Wan leaned forward. "Can you explain that in simple terms?" "Humans have billions of bacteria living in their intestines," So-Ra explained. "These bacteria help digest food. It appears that some of these bacteria produce waste products that kill the bioweapon's microbes. So Lieutenant Park is immune because of the bacteria in his stomach?" "Not just immune," said Dr. Tae-sung excitedly. "He is actively destroying the bioweapon. His digestive system is treating it like any other meal." Admiral Ha-Jin was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. "Dr. Kim, I need you to test this on more humans immediately. If this immunity is common to all humans, we may have found our answer." Over the next 6 hours, 12 more human volunteers arrived at the station. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, and civilians from across human space. Each one volunteered to drink the bioweapon that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. The results were the same every time. Not a single human showed any ill effects from the flesh dissolver. Some complained about the taste, comparing it to spoiled food or cleaning chemicals. But none of them were harmed. Lieutenant Yoon Seo Lee, a young biochemist from the Seoul Medical Corps, was particularly interested in the bacterial aspect. Dr. Kim, may I suggest we test people with different diets? I have heard that gut bacteria vary depending on what people eat. Sora agreed, and they began testing volunteers from different human colonies, people who ate mostly processed foods, others who preferred fermented dishes, vegetarians and meat eaters, young and old. Every single human was immune. This changes everything, Admiral Ha-Jin said as she reviewed the test results. The Vorthak's ultimate weapon is useless against humans. Commander Kai-Wan was studying tactical displays. Admiral, if humans are immune, we could use that in combat. Human soldiers could operate in environments where the bioweapon has been deployed. More than that, added Dr. Tae-sung, if we can isolate the specific mechanisms that provide immunity, we might be able to protect other species as well. Professor, Yanwu was already working on that problem. The key appears to be the combination of stomach acid and specific bacterial strains. Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium seem to be the most effective. Sora felt a surge of hope unlike anything she had experienced in months. Professor, how long would it take to develop a treatment for other species? If we work around the clock, perhaps days rather than weeks. But we would need to test it carefully. Admiral Ha-Jin activated her communication device. I am sending an emergency message to all coalition forces. Every human military unit is to be equipped with bioweapon detection equipment immediately. If the Vorthak deploy their weapon, our human soldiers will be the only ones who can operate in the affected area. As the scientific team began planning their research, Dongmin approached the observation window. Dr. Kim, what happens now? Sora smiled at him. Now, Lieutenant, you and every other human become the galaxy's secret weapon against tyranny. Outside the station, space looked the same as always. But inside the laboratory, everything had changed. The weapon that had ended 17 wars and killed billions of beings had met its match in the simple biological processes of human digestion. The Vorthak were about to learn that their reign of terror was coming to an end. The main laboratory on asteroid station Omega-7 had been transformed into a hive of scientific activity. Dr. Sora Kim stood at the center of it all, coordinating teams of researchers from across the galaxy. They had 36 hours before the Vorthak fleet reached Earth. Lieutenant Yoon Seo Lee was working at a bank of computers analyzing the bacterial samples from human volunteers. Her screen showed complex molecular diagrams and chemical formulas that represented the building blocks of human immunity. Dr. Kim, she called out, I have identified the key compounds. The bacteria in human intestines produce 3 specific acids that are deadly to the bioweapon: lactic acid, acetic acid, and something we are calling compound 7. Sora hurried over to examine the data. Can we synthesize these compounds? Already working on it. The first 2 are easy to produce. Compound 7 is more complex, but I think we can make it in large quantities. Across the lab, Professor Yanwu was conducting tests on alien volunteers. A brave Altarian soldier named Kexavar had agreed to test the first experimental treatment. They had given him a mixture of human gut bacteria suspended in a protective solution. How do you feel? Professor Yanwu asked through the communication system. Strange, replied Kexavar in his translated voice. My stomach feels inactive, like something is moving inside. That is normal. The bacteria are establishing themselves in your digestive system. Dr. Tae-sung was monitoring Kexavar's vital signs with her 4 arms dancing across different control panels. His immune system is adapting well. No signs of rejection. Meanwhile, Private Jiho Nam had become the test subject for field conditions. The young human soldier had volunteered for increasingly dangerous experiments. So far he had been exposed to airborne bioweapon, direct skin contact, and even injection into his bloodstream. Nothing affected him at all. Private Nam, Commander Kai-Wan said as he observed the latest test. Do you feel any different when the bioweapon is injected compared to drinking it? No, sir. Maybe a slight tingling sensation, but it goes away quickly. My body seems to process it no matter how it gets in. Dr. Sora was fascinated by the speed of human adaptation. Commander, I believe humans can neutralize the bioweapon faster then the Vorthak can produce it. A single human could theoretically consume enough bioweapon to sterilize a small city. What about long-term effects? Admiral Hajin asked. She had arrived to check on their progress. We have been monitoring all test subjects carefully. No negative effects at all. In fact, some of the volunteers report feeling more energetic. The bioweapon seems to provide additional nutrition as it is broken down. Lieutenant Dongmin Park, who had been the first test subject, was now helping with the research. Doctor, I have been thinking about this. What if we could turn humans into walking weapons against the Vorthak? What do you mean? If humans can consume the bioweapon safely, we could deliberately expose ourselves to large quantities. Then, when we breathe or sweat, we might release compounds that are toxic to Vorthak forces. Dr. Taesung looked up from her monitoring equipment. That is actually possible. Human breath and skin naturally release bacterial byproducts. If we saturate someone with the right bacteria, they could become a biological weapon. Sora felt a chill run down her spine. The implications were staggering. We would need to test this very carefully. We cannot risk harming our own people. I volunteer, said Jiho immediately. And me, added Dongmin. Within hours, 12 human volunteers had agreed to participate in the weaponization experiment. They consumed massive quantities of bioweapon mixed with concentrated bacterial cultures. The goal was to turn their bodies into factories for producing anti-Vorthak compounds. The results exceeded all expectations. After 6 hours of treatment, the human volunteers were exhaling air that killed bioweapon samples instantly. Their sweat contained acid strong enough to dissolve Vorthak equipment. Even their saliva had become toxic to the enemy weapon. This is incredible, Professor Yanwu said as he studied the test results. These humans have become living antidotes to the bioweapon. At the same time, Yoon Seo made a breakthrough with the alien treatment. Dr. Kim, I have successfully synthesized all 3 compounds. We can now produce a serum that should protect other species for up to 8 hours. They tested the serum on Kexvar, the Altarian volunteer. After drinking the protection formula, he was exposed to a small amount of bioweapon. For the first time in galactic history, a non-human survived direct exposure to the flesh dissolver. It works, Kexvar shouted through the communication system. I can feel the bioweapon trying to attack my cells, but something is stopping it. The laboratory erupted in cheers. Scientists from a dozen different species celebrated together as they realized they had achieved the impossible. But their celebration was interrupted by an urgent communication from Admiral Ha-Jin's flagship. All stations, this is Admiral Ha-Jin. Long-range sensors have detected the Vorthak fleet. They have dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Estimated arrival at Earth 18 hours. The mood in the laboratory instantly became serious again. They had made incredible discoveries, but they were still racing against time. Dr. Kim, Admiral Ha-Jin continued, how many doses of the protection serum can you produce? Sora consulted with her team quickly. Admiral, working at maximum capacity, we can produce enough serum to protect about 10,000 coalition soldiers. But the effect only lasts 8 hours, and we do not know how well it will work in actual combat conditions. What about the human volunteers who have been weaponized? We have 12 soldiers who are now toxic to Vorthak forces, but we do not know how effective they will be against an entire fleet. Commander Kaiwan was studying tactical displays. Admiral, I suggest we focus on getting human forces to Earth as quickly as possible. If humans are truly immune, they might be our best hope for ground combat. Agreed. I am ordering all human military units to Earth immediately. Dr. Kim, I need you to prepare as much serum as possible and send it to our main fleet. Even if we can only protect a small number of soldiers, it might make the difference. As the communication ended, Sora looked around the laboratory. In less than 48 hours, her team had revolutionized their understanding of biology, chemistry, and warfare. They had turned humanity's biggest weakness, their aggressive digestive systems, into their greatest strength. But the real test was still coming. In 18 hours, the galaxy would learn whether human immunity could stand against the full might of the Vorthak Empire. Yun Seo appeared beside her, holding a vial of the protection serum. "Doctor, do you think it will be enough?" Sora looked at the humans working around the laboratory. Dongmin and Jiho were preparing equipment for transport to Earth. Other volunteers were helping synthesize more serum. Despite the incredible danger they faced, every human in the facility was calm and determined. "I do not know if it will be enough," she said quietly, "but I am beginning to think that humans are more dangerous than the Vorthak realize." Emperor Vexhai stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, watching the blue planet called Earth grow larger on the viewing screen. Around him, 200 Vorthak warships moved in perfect formation. This would be the largest deployment of flesh dissolver in galactic history. "My Emperor," said General Korthak, his chief military advisor. "Our scouts report that coalition forces are gathering around the planet. They appear to be preparing for a ground battle." Vexhai made a sound that might have been laughter. The Vorthak Emperor was 7 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. His species had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries through fear and superior firepower. "Let them prepare," he said in his deep voice. "It will make no difference. Once we release the bioweapon, there will be no ground to fight on." The Emperor had received reports about supposed human immunity to the flesh dissolver, but he dismissed them as coalition propaganda. No species in the galaxy had ever survived exposure to his ultimate weapon. Humans were young and primitive. They would die like all the others. "Begin deployment of the bioweapon over the lunar colonies," he ordered. "We will test their immunity there before attacking the main planet." On Luna Base, Sergeant Du Young Choi was leading a platoon of human Marines in preparation for the attack. They had received word that the Vorthak were planning to test their bioweapon on the moon first. "Listen up," he told his soldiers. "Intelligence says the Vorthak want to see if we really are immune. They are going to drop bioweapon canisters on the surface and watch what happens." Private Sunwoo raised his hand. "Sergeant, what are our orders?" "We are going to walk right through their bioweapon cloud and show them that humans do not scare easily." The first bioweapon canisters fell from orbit 30 minutes later. They burst open on the lunar surface, releasing thick green clouds that spread across the mining colonies. The Vorthak fleet watched from high orbit, expecting to see the humans die within minutes. Instead, they watched Sergeant Choi lead his Marines directly through the bioweapon cloud. The humans were breathing the deadly mist like it was ordinary air. Some of them even seemed to be enjoying themselves. "Sergeant," called Private Minjun over the radio, "this stuff tastes like sour candy." "Stay focused," Choi replied. "We have company coming." A Vorthak landing craft descended through the bioweapon cloud, planning to collect samples and confirm the deaths of the human defenders. The pilot was confident that nothing could survive in such a concentrated bioweapon environment. He was wrong. Sergeant Choi and his Marines were waiting when the landing craft touched down. As the Vorthak soldiers emerged, the humans attacked them with hand-to-hand combat. But something strange happened. The Vorthak soldiers began collapsing before the humans even touched them. They were dying from secondary exposure to the bioweapon that clung to the humans' clothing and skin. "Command, this is Sergeant Choi." He radioed to Luna Base. "Enemy forces are down. They appear to be affected by their own bioweapon when they get close to us." On board the Destroyer of Worlds, Emperor Vexhai watched the impossible scene through his ship's cameras. His most elite soldiers were dying from exposure to their own ultimate weapon. The humans were not only immune, they had become carriers of death for Vorthak forces. "This is impossible," he growled. "Deploy more bioweapon. Increase the concentration." The Vorthak fleet released every bioweapon canister they had in their forward cargo holds. The lunar surface disappeared under clouds of green death that should have sterilized the entire moon. Instead, the human forces used the cover to advance on Vorthak positions. Captain Minho Yoon, commanding a company of human naval infantry, led his troops directly through the densest bioweapon clouds. "Marines," he called over the radio, "the enemy cannot operate in their own weapon deployment area. This gives us a tactical advantage. Advance on all enemy positions." The Vorthak had never faced an enemy that could survive in a bioweapon environment. Their tactics, their equipment, even their protective suits were designed for fighting in clean areas. They had no way to combat an enemy that thrived in the very environment that should have killed them. Captain Yoon's forces boarded 3 Vorthak cruisers that had landed on the lunar surface. The human Marines carried active bioweapon on their equipment and clothing. As they moved through the enemy ships, Vorthak crew members collapsed and died from secondary exposure. "Captain," reported Sergeant Yujin over the radio. "We have secured the ship. Enemy forces are neutralized." "Casualties on our side?" "None, sir. A few of the guys say they are getting hungry from all the exercise." Emperor Vexhai could not believe the reports he was receiving. 3 of his best cruisers had been captured by human forces, who seemed to treat bioweapon exposure like a light snack. "General Korthak," he snapped, "prepare the entire bioweapon arsenal. We will release everything we have at once. Create a dead zone around this planet that nothing can survive. My Emperor, if we release all our bioweapon at once, the area will remain toxic to our own forces for months. I do not care. These humans must be stopped before word of their immunity spreads to other species." The Vorthak fleet opened every cargo hold containing bioweapon canisters. Thousands of containers fell toward Earth like deadly rain. The concentration was 10 times higher than anything that had ever been deployed before. On Earth's surface, General Taehyun Song watched the bioweapon deployment through his command bunker's periscope. The sky turned green as the deadly mist settled over entire continents. "All human forces," he broadcasted. "The enemy has just created the perfect combat environment for us. Begin Operation Immunity." Human soldiers emerged from bunkers and shelters across the planet. They walked through bioweapon concentrations that would have killed billions of any other species. Instead of dying, they began hunting Vorthak landing parties with ruthless efficiency. Lieutenant Boram and her squad encountered a Vorthak reconnaissance team near what used to be Seoul. The aliens were wearing full protective gear and moving carefully through the bioweapon fog. "Contact," she whispered into her radio. 6 enemy soldiers, grid reference 47 Alpha. The humans attacked from multiple directions, emerging from the green mist like ghosts. The Vorthak soldiers tried to fight back, but their protective suits made them slow and clumsy. Worse, every time a human got close to them, the concentrated bioweapon on human clothing began seeping through their protection. Within minutes, all 6 Vorthak soldiers were dead from bioweapon poisoning. "Command, this is Lieutenant Boram. Enemy patrol eliminated. No human casualties." Similar reports were coming from across the planet. Human forces were using the bioweapon deployment as cover for counterattacks. The Vorthak's ultimate weapon had become humanity's greatest tactical advantage. Emperor Vexhai stood in stunned silence as he received casualty reports from across his fleet. Hundreds of his soldiers were dead. His bioweapon had not only failed to kill the humans, it had made them more dangerous. "My Emperor," General Korthak said quietly, "perhaps we should consider retreat." "No," Vexhai snarled. "We will use conventional weapons, orbital bombardment, nuclear missiles. We will burn this planet to ash." But as he gave the order, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. Human forces had somehow reached orbit and were boarding Vorthak vessels. The tide of battle had turned completely. The species that was supposed to die had become the hunters. And the Vorthak were learning what it felt like to be afraid. General Taehyun Song stood in the command center of Seoul Defense Station, watching tactical displays that showed the impossible. Human forces were winning the battle for Earth. The same bioweapon that had destroyed 17 worlds was now helping humanity defeat the most powerful empire in the galaxy. "General," reported Colonel J. Meehan from the orbital command post, "human boarding parties have successfully captured 12 Vorthak cruisers. Enemy resistance is collapsing wherever. Our forces operate in bioweapon-affected areas." The strategy was working better than anyone had hoped. Human soldiers would deliberately expose themselves to bioweapon canisters, then board enemy ships while carrying active traces of the deadly substance. The Vorthak crew members died from secondary exposure while the humans remained completely unaffected. Captain Hyun-Soo Park, leading Marine Battalion 7, had just completed the capture of a Vorthak battleship. General Song, this is Captain Park. We have secured the enemy vessel designation Heavy Strike. The Vorthak crew abandoned ship rather than face us in close combat. Casualties, Captain? None on our side, sir. Private Chang Ho says the bioweapon is making him feel more energetic than usual. Emperor Vexhai was experiencing something no Vorthak ruler had felt in 3 centuries. Complete military defeat. His flagship was surrounded by human vessels that seemed immune to everything he could throw at them. Worse, his own ultimate weapon had become their most effective tool. General Korthak, he said to his remaining military advisor, how many ships have we lost? 47 captured, 31 destroyed, and 62 have retreated beyond combat range. Korthak replied, his voice filled with disbelief. My Emperor, our forces cannot operate effectively in areas where we have deployed bioweapon. The humans use our own weapon as cover for their attacks. Vexhai slammed one of his 4 fists against the command console. This is impossible. No species can survive the flesh dissolver. Emperor, perhaps the time has come to consider surrender. Before Vexhai could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Alert! Human boarding craft detected. All hands to defensive positions. On the hangar deck of the Destroyer of Worlds, Sergeant Du Young Choi led a team of human special forces through the corridors. They had deliberately walked through a bioweapon cloud before boarding, making them toxic to any Vorthak they encountered. Sergeant, called Private Yunji, the enemy crew is retreating to the rear sections of the ship. Let them run. Their own bioweapon will do our work for us. As the humans advanced, Vorthak crew members fled before them. But the concentrated bioweapon clinging to human equipment made the air itself deadly to the aliens. Within an hour, most of the ship's crew had either died from exposure or escaped in emergency pods. Emperor Vexhai found himself trapped in his own command center with only a handful of loyal guards. Through the ship's communication system, he could hear human voices getting closer. This is Sergeant Choi to all Vorthak personnel. You have 5 minutes to abandon ship before we secure this vessel. For the first time in his life, Vexhai felt true fear. The species he had planned to exterminate was now hunting him through his own flagship. Meanwhile, Dr. Sora Kim was witnessing a breakthrough that would change galactic politics forever. In her laboratory on asteroid station Omega-7, she had successfully created a stable version of the human immunity serum that could protect other species for up to 72 hours. Admiral Ha-Jin, she reported over the communication array, the enhanced serum is ready. We can now provide temporary immunity to all coalition forces. How many doses do you have? Enough for 50,000 soldiers, with more being produced. Every hour, Admiral Ha-Jin was coordinating the battle from her flagship in Earth orbit. Coalition forces from across the galaxy were arriving to support humanity. When they learned that humans could neutralize the bioweapon, species that had lived in fear of the Vorthak for decades suddenly found the courage to fight. Dr. Kim, begin immediate distribution of the serum to all coalition vessels. Priority goes to boarding parties and ground assault teams. The first non-human forces to receive the serum were a company of Altarian crystal soldiers led by Commander Oro Keksavar. After taking the immunity treatment, they joined human forces in assault operations against Vorthak positions. This is incredible, Keksavar reported as his troops advanced through a bioweapon-contaminated area. For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of their ultimate weapon. But the real turning point came when news of the battle reached Vorthak subject worlds. For 3 centuries, entire civilizations had submitted to Vorthak rule because they feared the bioweapon. Now they learned that the weapon could be defeated. The planet Zerion Prime was the first to rebel. Governor Talvek, who had served the Vorthak for 20 years, received word that humans were immune to the flesh dissolver. Within hours, he declared independence and began attacking Vorthak installations. People of Zerion, he announced over planetary communication systems. The humans have shown us that the Vorthak can be defeated. Their ultimate weapon is useless against those who refuse to fear it. Similar uprisings began across the galaxy. On Rigel 7, Centauri Station and the mining worlds of the Outer Rim, Subject species rose against their Vorthak overlords. The empire that had ruled through fear was crumbling as that fear disappeared. Back on the Destroyer of Worlds, Emperor Vexhai made a desperate decision. If he could not use the bioweapon against humans, he would destroy Earth with every nuclear weapon in his arsenal. All ships, he commanded, prepare for planetary bombardment. We will turn their world into radioactive ash. But as the Vorthak fleet prepared to launch nuclear missiles, human forces completed their boarding operations. Captain Min Ho Yoon had secured the weapons control systems on 3 Vorthak dreadnoughts. General Song, this is Captain Yoon. We have control of enemy nuclear arsenals. Should we turn their weapons against them? General Song considered the options, carefully. Negative, Captain. Disable their weapons, but do not fire on fleeing vessels. We are liberators, not conquerors. The final moment of the battle came when Sergeant Choi reached the command center of the Destroyer of Worlds. Emperor Vexhai stood alone, his guards having fled or died from bioweapon exposure. Emperor Vexhai, Choi said through his breathing mask, I'm placing you under arrest for crimes against galactic civilization. The Emperor looked at the human soldier with a mixture of fear and disbelief. How? He whispered. How did your species survive our ultimate weapon? We ate it, Choi replied simply. Your bioweapon tastes terrible, but it is not much worse than military rations. The formal surrender came 6 hours later. Emperor Vexhai, broadcasting from a coalition prison ship, announced the dissolution of the Vorthak Empire. His remaining forces were ordered to surrender immediately and face trial for war crimes. But the real victory was not military. It was the knowledge that the galaxy's most feared weapon could be defeated by something as simple as human biology. Dr. Sora Kim worked with scientists from dozens of species to develop permanent immunity treatments. Within weeks, every major world had access to the serum that protected against bioweapon attack. Commander Kai Wan, now serving as humanity's representative to the newly formed Galactic Council, often reflected on the strange turns of fate that had brought them to this point. Admiral, he said to Ha Jin as they watched the first session of the Free Galactic Senate, do you think the Vorthak ever imagined they would be defeated by human digestion? Admiral Ha Jin smiled. Commander, I think this proves that even the Laisio, most advanced civilizations, can be undone by underestimating the simple things. The Vorthak built their empire on fear of their bioweapon. They never considered that somewhere in the galaxy, there might be a species that would treat their ultimate weapon like a bad meal. The war was over. The galaxy was free. And humanity had earned its place among the stars not through superior technology or overwhelming firepower, but through the simple biological fact that they could digest almost anything. In the years that followed, human soldiers became known as the Immune Guard, protectors of worlds against bioweapon attack. The species that had once been seen as primitive newcomers were now the galaxy's guardians against tyranny. And on Earth, in a small restaurant in Seoul, Lieutenant Dongmin Park would sometimes tell customers about the time he saved the galaxy by drinking a bioweapon that tasted like spoiled kimchi. The universe, he would say with a smile, had a sense of humor after all.